Hello folks and welcome to F1 Live, the post-race show coming to you live and direct from the paddock here at Mugello after the inaugural Tuscan Grand Prix. Will Buxton and Pietro Fittipaldi along with you once again after a crazy day which saw 2 red flags, a number of big incidents and a Mercedes 1-2. But before we get to the results of the day, we're going to go to our first interview of the day. Danny Kvyat came home in a brilliant P7. What a drive. And after qualifying yesterday, you said you had large attachments. You needed those large attachments today. What a race, man.
Yeah, it was not easy race, to be honest. A lot was happening. I feel like I've done like 3 races in one day in a way, because with the start every time, and standing start is much harder, you know, than normal safety car restart. It's big risk all the time. You need to stay focused all the time. But very proud of the team today, and also in a way myself, because we didn't do any mistakes today. It was very tricky conditions, very tricky race, but we did the best we could. Finishing P7 today was absolutely the best result possible.
You did a brilliant job. You're a man much in demand, so we'll let you get on. Thanks for coming on the show, mate. Much appreciated. Absolutely brilliant to see Danny Kvyat on the show. Of course, a P7 at the end there. Romain Grosjean just out of the points. Unfortunately for him, he was well within, I think, a grasp of possibly fighting for the points today. It was just one of those topsy-turvy days where anything that could happen did happen. As we said, 2 red flags, a massive crash on the first restart after safety car on lap 1. Should we take you through the race results so that we've got some more semblance of order to know exactly what happened in this Grand Prix? Let's do that. It was a Mercedes 1-2, Lewis Hamilton from Valtteri Bottas. Wasn't quite that simple though, because it was Valtteri that led from that first start. Then Alexander Albon with a first ever podium in 3rd place for Red Bull Racing. Behind them, Daniel Ricciardo could so easily have been a podium for him today. Then Sergio Perez, P5, his teammate Lance Stroll, a big crash. Lando Norris in 6th, then Kvyat, we've just spoken to him. Leclerc in 8th, Raikkonen 9th, Sebastian Vettel 10th, so a double points haul for Ferrari, which they weren't expecting. Behind them, only 2 other finishers. George Russell so close to points for Williams. Grosjean P12 for Haas. Everybody else there DNF, all for a number of different reasons, which we will get onto. Pietro Fittipaldi, I can now welcome you properly to the show. What a race. Absolutely incredible. We knew this was going to be a challenge. We knew Mugello was going to be a very unique Grand Prix, but I don't think any of us could have expected 2 red flags and that much chaos.
No, I don't think anyone could have expected this. I mean, first, as a racing driver, this is one of the favorite tracks. I raced in Formula Renault. I can imagine this track here with the Formula 1 car. Arrabbiata 1, 2, such a fast corner. And honestly, I was expecting a difficult race because it's very hard to overtake, very high-speed corners. You know, when you're running high downforce cars, it's very hard to follow. So I was expecting a non-spectacular race, but it ended up, you know, having 3 standing starts, the normal one, then 2 after the 2 red flags. So it ended up being very, very exciting.
It was 3 sprint races essentially today.
Yeah, it was like having 3 stages in a race. It makes it exciting though.
It really did, and it meant that the race really ebbed and flowed between each section. It was looking for all the world at one point like Daniel Ricciardo was going to fly to a podium for Renault. Lance Stroll was looking good for a podium at one point, and then through it all, Alex Albon, who had a couple of really bad starts actually and fell down the order on a number of occasions, finally came good, finally made it good at the end and put that Red Bull on the podium for his first ever F1 podium.
Yeah, for sure. And even the first start he had on the actual start of the race, he actually had a very good start. I think Max had a poor start, fell to the back. And like, you know, when we were hearing Danny said, it's like having 3 sprint races. Yeah. And remember in Monza, Lando was saying on these restarts, when you do a standing start after a red flag, it always changes. The clutch bite point changes, the car's lighter, you're on a different compound of tire. So for sure that every time you approach that start, you're always, you know, you need to give your full focus every time, but it's always a little bit different. So the drivers have to adapt every time to it.
Absolutely. Now we're going to take you through a number of the different incidents that happened through the race. We'll send you back to the studio at some point as well, not quite yet, in a little while, because I know Sam Collins and Rosanna Tennant are going to want to run through all of those with you. You spoke about Max Verstappen at the start. They'll go through this in a little while, but he had an engine issue on the way to the grid when he came off the line, dropped back through the field, as you said, and then got caught in a melee, a bit of a sort of a sandwich with Gasly and with your teammate, actually, with Romain Grosjean. Let's have a little look here. This is Max Verstappen sitting on the grid and really not happy at all. The boys, I mean, they did this at the end of the first triple header. Now they're doing it at the end of the 3rd triple header, trying to get that car back together on the grid. Amazing work from these guys. They've been on the road pretty much for 11 weeks solid. They thought they'd fixed it, but when the lights went out, he bogged down, he fell back through the order, then took that contact. He was out on the spot. Last week's race winner, Pierre Gasly, was out on the spot, and that's what brought out the safety car, and it was the reaction, the restart from that got us out.
Yeah, for sure. It was after the restart. You know, it's very difficult here. When I was watching my brother in every F3 race, so they had some safety car restarts, and the leader always slows down and waits till the last minute to be able to start, because you can get a jump on the guy in second, and you want to make that straight, at least the front straight, since it's 1 kilometer long, you want to make it as short as possible so you don't get the guy in seconds and get the toe advantage. But basically, Valtteri did the same thing. He slowed down, and there was obviously a big chaos in the middle of the pack.
Huge chaos. Of course, all of that brought about because of the retirement of Max Verstappen. A really disappointing weekend for him after it was looking so good for that potential, possibly even the win. Let's hear from Max now.
Max, it all kind of started going on before the race had even started. What was going on the grid?
Just problems. Was not idling, and I had an anti-stall in the formation lap as well. Just idling. I don't know what happened. And yeah, I had a good launch, so I went around Lewis and I had a better launch than Valtteri. But then once I went flat out, the engine just had a similar problem, I guess, to what we had in Monza. So there was no power there, and yeah, then you get into this situation where you are in the middle of the pack, and it's quite easy to get involved in a crash. I don't even know what happened. I just got hit from behind. But at the end, you know, I'm not disappointed about that. We shouldn't even be in that position. It's just really disappointing that, again, we have a retirement.
How frustrating, because this could have been a really strong race for you guys.
Yeah, but could have, you know, could have, should have, would have. I don't really care. It's what it is, and I'm really not happy at the moment. But can't change it.
Hard luck, thank you.
Good to hear from Max Verstappen. Sadly, a DNF for him today. One driver who did make it all the way to the flag and in the points, Sebastian Vettel.
Hey.
3 sprint races essentially today.
Yeah, it was a busy afternoon, but if you have 3 chances, you hope that you get a little bit more than 1 point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a tough day for you guys out there, but to bring both cars home in the points after what had looked like a difficult weekend, is that a good result?
Well, I mean, first of all, there weren't that many other cars behind us. I guess we fought really hard and tried to do everything we can. So obviously we're not happy with the positions that we had. I think 9th and 10th on the track. Obviously with Kimi's penalty, it was very close for me, but yeah, tough day for us. Obviously the car was difficult to drive, and we didn't have the pace to really push for more.
I know it's not been the weekend that you or Ferrari wanted to celebrate 1,000 GPs, but to do it on this track, you as a racer, someone who enjoys the challenges of Formula One, how good was it to race at Mugello, to take this thing right to the limit here?
Yeah, it was good. Unfortunately, we had the brakes. Otherwise, it could have been a bit harder physically, maybe. Some of the guys would have got a bit tired, but yeah, it's a nice track, but obviously it's quite a handful for us, and the balance wasn't great. So I think you enjoy it a little bit more when the car is really doing what you want. But as I said, we try to do everything we can.
Thanks for coming on the show. Very much appreciated. Thanks, Seb. Cheers, Britta. Absolutely lovely to hear from Sebastian Vettel. Let's hear from Lando Norris as well. Lando.
Hello.
What a race, what a day. Talk us through it, a race of 3/3.
Struggles, and LP6. That's pretty much summed up my race. I think was very tough from my side. We didn't have the pace the whole race to do a lot. I was surprised to keep up with Perez in the first one, but after that it was just trying to stay out of the chaos. And I think yeah, there was a lot of it today, and I ended up P6, which we weren't expecting at all, and we couldn't really do on pure pace. It was just trying to avoid the crashes which were happening everywhere on track. So yeah, chaotic, not easy to always stop and start and do everything again, but was good fun.
You put some good moves on the track, but it was, as you say, about keeping your nose clean, keeping out of the melee, keeping out of the craziness. Yeah. On a day like this, when McLaren, I know, weren't expecting a very easy afternoon at all.
No, not at all. And we were praying for the conditions to change a little bit, the wind to change, but it seemed, if anything, a bit worse than the last few days. So before I got in, I wasn't looking forward to to driving the car in a lot of ways, just because it was so difficult and so tricky. But yeah, it was a shame obviously for Carlos not to have him out there. We could have had maybe a few more points, but with both of Renault's qualifying ahead, both the racing points and finishing ahead of one of each of them was definitely better than we thought, and some good points. So it was damage limitation, and I think we did a good job as a team today.
Carlos, ultimately a very lucky boy in that crash. The Halo doing an amazing job within it. I know you weren't involved in that huge smash, but having, I imagine, maybe seen it on one of the red flag periods, what do you make of that restart?
I don't know. It happens every now and then with every category. It's just, you know, every driver in the queue is wanting to jump the next driver, and everyone's doing that from first to last. It's just the way it is. It's very difficult anyway to keep just a very constant speed in these cars, because you have, you know, as soon as you got 1% of power, it's a lot of power on your throttle pedal. So it's very tricky, and obviously the further back you go, the more of a concertina effect there is. And I don't know, I haven't seen it enough to say what actually happened, but yeah, thankfully everyone's all right, and obviously Carlos, because he looked like he took the biggest impact out of all of it. Not seeing him, and then the car moving and pretty much hitting a car which was effectively stopped in some ways. So yeah, good to see he's okay, but a shame for us as a team.
Thanks for coming on the show. Great drive today, man. Really well done. Oh, actually, before you go, quick one. It's been 9 races in 11 weeks. How hard's it been for you, and how appreciative are you of your boys and what everyone's done at the team?
It's been very tricky. I mean, this track was difficult for us as drivers, I think, especially that final stint was a lot of pushing, but yeah, I need to give a big thanks to my team. You can tell the mechanics are pushing, they're struggling. It's a lot for them. You know, they're guys which need to stay and do pack up now, so I'll give them a hand, but they're the boys which work much longer hours than we do as drivers. So I feel for them, but yeah, we do what we can to keep them motivated and happy. So we'll come back refreshed for the next one.
Great stuff, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Always good to hear from Lando. He had a really strong dive today when you consider how difficult that McLaren was going to be all the way through this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. 6 is it's good points, without a doubt. And like he said, did he mention the wind? He said that he was struggling with the wind, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the same as our drivers. They commented the same thing. The wind affected the car so much, especially in the high-speed corners. These cars are so dependent on the downforce. If you get a bit of dirty air, a different wind direction, it can change completely the balance of the car.
Yeah. It was fascinating hearing George Russell earlier in the weekend saying he was picking out the Ferrari flag down there. And a lot of people sort of saying, oh, I didn't know drivers, you know, could pick that out. But you hear at Indy every year, the guy's looking for the windsock because you change the rocker depending on which direction the windsock is on every lap in quali.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, it makes a hell of a difference. I was once testing an Indy car at Texas, and there was gusts of wind going 30, 40 miles an hour, and the car is moving down the straight. Your steering wheel is straight and the car is moving. So for sure here, a high downforce track, a little bit of wind direction change, and you'll have a completely different handling car.
Now, we've heard from Lando Norris. You've seen a replay of the crash that his teammate Carlos Sainz endured amongst a number of other drivers. We're going to head back to the studio in a while to talk about that. But for now, let's hear from his teammate Carlos Sainz on the aftermath of that impact. We saw him nursing his hand, so whether he's okay after that big impact.
Carlos, I saw you holding your wrist. Is it okay?
But yeah, it's okay. And obviously happy to see that everyone is okay after that big crash.
How was it? What happened?
Well, I wish I knew, but it looks like someone in the midfield thought that the race had started, or a lot of people thought that the race had started. I was stuck behind an Alpha, and we were both getting the slipstreams and racing nearly already, you know. And as soon as everything opened in front, and suddenly I found 3 or 4 cars completely crossed like that in the middle of the straight, and I just took a couple of them with me. So very dangerous situation. It reminded me about very nasty things from the past. So I don't want to say nothing, but something that is definitely needs to be analyzed and find out what happened.
And you had a really good start right at the beginning, and then did you make contact or did you spin?
Yeah, I had a contact with Racing Point, and that sent me in a spin. But the start was really good.
Frustrating then overall this weekend?
Yeah, it wasn't the weekend where we expected to get the most points. So. I was willing to risk it at the start to try and make something happen for us and get track position. It unfortunately didn't work. Normally it does, but for me today it didn't work, and I had that slight contact and small spin. But I was still P15, so there was still a whole race to happen, and unfortunately we couldn't take part on the rest.
Hard luck. Thank you.
Yeah, the wind knocked out of Carlos Sainz there, and I think as much for the shock of looking at one car suddenly seeing him dart out, and then you're straight into the back of another. A really scary moment for him. One guy who had a good race today in P4. Come back! Come back! Hello, chap, P4.
Hello.
I mean, Cyril's getting ever closer to that tattoo.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, mate. Thank you. Yeah, it's when it comes, I don't think you'll see a man so excited to get his first tattoo. I think what was initially fear is now anticipation. So, look, I felt we've never been closer, but it was what it was. You know, Alex had a lot of pace at the end. You know, low fuel and on that soft, it felt like his car came alive more than it was. You know, in the first part of the race. So, unfortunately, we didn't have an answer.
Without that second red flag, do you think the podium is yours today?
I certainly felt in control, you know, of the pace on the medium. I was just communicating with Carol, my engineer, just the gap to Stroll, just managing it, making sure he didn't get in the DRS. So I felt like if he turned it up, I was able to. So yeah, I felt like that was maybe a better chance, but in saying that, you know, with 12, 13 laps to go, I think we're in second, you know, so we were close. We just didn't have it at the end.
It was a race truncated by obviously all those red flags. Talk to us very quickly, I know you've got to go, just about that restart and what went on there.
Yeah, so the restarts were fun. I think standing starts are always a little hectic, but we've been having really good ones, so I was happy with that. And every start I felt like I made positions, and obviously the last one we got Valtteri, and sitting in second was quite nice. Only lasted about a lap and a half, but yeah, I thought even that, you know, I thought it just gave me some separation to Albon, and I thought that was probably all we needed to hold on to the podium. But as I said, he came on so strong, we didn't have an answer. But fourth is good. We're getting closer. What do you do?
Thanks, man.
All right. Grazie.
Good to hear from Daniel Ricciardo. Now, I did want him to talk about that restart from behind the safety car, but I think his focus is so much on that fourth place and the potentially lost podium. But I know two people who will want to talk about it very much and have a deep dive on how we got into that situation and how it unfolded. Back in the studio, Rosanna Tennant and Sam Collins. This really, guys, the moment that changed this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Will. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Sam. Yeah, we'll talk about the rolling restart very shortly, but let's go right back to Max Verstappen heading to the grid. There were problems with his engine. Have we established what they were yet? And will we be told, do you think?
I think we might be told, because Honda are usually quite open about this. I'm not entirely sure they know what the problem was with the car. You can see him getting on the team radio saying that they've got an issue. The mechanics dived into the left-hand side of the car. They were really struggling to find out what's going on and try and tweak something and fix something, get it ready for the start. It didn't work out though, because there was clearly something wrong with that Honda power unit. They've got performance in that power unit, but clearly still struggling for reliability, which is what happens when you push that performance super hard.
And Max mentioned it was similar to the problems they had in Monza. What do you think, or where do you think we're going to see this reoccur? Where will it rear its head again?
Well, anywhere. It seems a bit of a lottery, because Max had problems in Monza, but Pierre Gasly certainly didn't. But off the start, that's where it really sort of manifested itself and led to quite a lot of action.
He just got swallowed up, didn't he, off the start? And then he's already spoken about how he shouldn't have been in that position, so he shouldn't have been collected. Just talk us through what happened there and where you think everyone came a cropper.
Well, we heard him just say in the interview there, he got a decent start, got off the line really well, so what you call it, the 64-foot time was really, really good for the start. You can see him just getting away there, getting a run on the Mercedes on the right-hand side, but then he just goes for the power and, well, there isn't anywhere, and just everybody comes flying past him, and he's stuck in the midfield. And because he's found himself out of position, down on power, and being swamped by everybody, he's created this concertina effect around him. And look what happens just in front. Well, you saw what happens behind. The guys backed up by Max Verstappen, they got squeezed, they got messy, and it just caused carnage. And I love to, you know, it sounds wrong, but I love
smile,
it. I
it's
know.
so big.
It just reminded me of my days. Sunday nights going to Wimbledon Stadium at the end of the day, which is a big stock car racing track in London, or used to be. And I love a bit of destruction as well.
Well, it was action after action. Of course, we then had the rolling restart. We were all messaging throughout the race, trying to establish who really was at fault. A lot of people suddenly thought it would be Valtteri Bottas. It's up to him, of course, to control the pack. Let's start with him. Where were the safety car lines? How was he doing in terms of managing the pack? Because he was still weaving almost once people had put their foot to the floor.
Well, this is straight up, sort of straight out of the IndyCar playbook, where you're having a look, and you can see here that Valtteri Bottas has really gone past the first safety car line, and he hasn't got his foot fully down. He's still warming his tyres, and already before Bottas had really got going, there was absolute carnage behind him, and you can see the cars flying off everywhere. Who caused it? We're riding on board of the Alfa Romeo there, and he just had nowhere to go. He started to accelerate, but the cars in front were stopped. But the accident was already happening by that point, and I still haven't seen everybody's onboard. Now we're looking at the McLaren onboard, again, just piling into the back, because when you see a driver launching as a race driver, you keep your foot in because you don't want to lose those positions. We heard that said. Here we are on the Haas, managing to stay out of most of that carnage, but probably damaging his tyres. And yeah, I think that was Grosjean there, just managing to stay out of it. But which driver went first?
Well,
we don't know the question. I haven't even seen all of these angles yet, so I'm still looking down at the screen.
You're so excited to go through all of our onboard footage. We then suggested it might be Danny Kvyat, and we've also heard from Nicholas Latifi saying how difficult these types of starts are. He's experienced them obviously in F2 more recently. Danny Kvyat, is he to blame?
I don't think he is, actually, because we heard this and Will sent over, he thought it was Danny Kvyat, so we went and looked on the onboard footage and we had a look and we'd ride on board. Now here's the telestration. This is an angle I haven't seen before. So look at those cars pulled out. Now what you're looking for is a car with a big gap and then putting his foot down and then someone slowing down. Is that George Russell?
Russell, exactly.
George Russell gets his foot down, but the field hasn't accelerated. He goes to the right. Everybody else accelerates because they think the race has started, and that's where the carnage happens. Now, I wonder, and it would be interesting to see, I'm not sure if we've got George Russell's on board to see, but I think George Russell might be responsible for this. I'm being told that we do have on board with George Russell. Here we go. So we're riding on board with George Russell, coming down the start-finish straight. Now, he's left a big gap in front of him, now puts his foot down to catch up. Everybody else behind thinks that's the restart. It's not, and they all start piling into each other. When he backs off, there's just absolute chaos behind him. His rear-facing camera would be great. I don't think we've got that downloaded from the car yet, but it is absolutely wonderful to look at these really difficult situations on the restart. And what I think the drivers haven't done, they haven't watched enough IndyCar racing, because we saw this exact problem a few weeks ago. Alex Palou, driving for the Team Go IndyCar team, got a restart wrong just like that and piled into a bunch of the McLaren cars off the back.
OK, and so any repercussions for George Russell, do you think, after this race?
I think the race stewards are going to be taking a very long, hard look at that restart to try and work out how they, as race stewards, got it wrong. Did Valtteri Bottas do something wrong by not accelerating in time? I don't think he did. I think he was acting completely within his rights. Roman Grosjean clearly disagrees.
And of course, Lewis Hamilton got on the radio saying those safety car lights went out very, very late, and he said that is the problem if they go out late. Do you agree with Lewis on that?
I do. Bottas hadn't built up that air, that sort of free air that he'd wanted to. But then we heard Pietro saying earlier on the table that actually you don't want to. You want to go slow. You don't want them to start early on and be able to Lewis to have a run at you and try and get through, because that's what he was really worried about. Lewis Hamilton, he wasn't worried about what was going on down the back of the field. So he was trying to outcycle Lewis Hamilton by weaving and then maybe slowing down and making out he's going and then going just at the point he wanted to. So his actions there and Lewis just watching him, they were playing their own game. Behind though, because that George Russell had left that big gap, and I'm pretty sure it was Russell, you ended up with that concertina and this just big enormous smash.
Well, it was great to watch. Of course, all the drivers are absolutely fine. But from our desk to your table, we'll be back with a little bit more analysis later on in the show, Will.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, fascinating stuff. What was really interesting with that was when we watched the Bottas replay, and you pointed it out, while he's weaving, he isn't decelerating. You never hear the engine note change. He's at a constant level of throttle, and then as he stops weaving, that's when he accelerates, and by the time he accelerates, the crash is already happening behind him.
Yeah, it had already happened. So he was weaving, and as soon as he stops, but he doesn't decelerate, he the crash already happened behind. And then watching the replay of the crash, the way I see it is, yeah, I think Russell had a bit of a gap. He accelerated, but he realized that the people ahead of him hadn't gone. He didn't decelerate that quickly because even Kevin behind him had the time to slow down. But the issue was, I think Latifi got a bit of speed and reacted really late.
Hold on, let's pause for a second. Let's just listen to the throttle here. He's accelerating.
Yeah, so I feel like he had enough time for people behind him to realize that he decelerated. Yeah, he did accelerate because there was a gap, which at the end I think caused it. But Latifi reacted late. Very late. And Giovinazzi behind didn't see the car ahead of Latifi and went straight into Magnussen.
I originally thought that it was Danick Kvyat who'd actually created that gap between the lead pack and then everybody behind, but on closer inspection, it did appear that it was George Russell, as you say, coming through that final corner. Danny had already gone with the Renaults ahead. Then there was that big gap, and as we heard, he started to go, and you could hear the engine. He brakes, he decelerates, and everything around him happens as a result of that. Now, I don't know if that is his fault, if it's just a result of what's going on all around him, but it is, a pretty horrifying moment. Let's hear from the other guys involved in that moment. Let's start with the guy who was just that little bit too late to react as Kevin Magnussen's car was flying towards him, Antonio Giovinazzi.
Antonio, that restart, what happened?
I think it can be really dangerous like that. You know, I was already flat out, the group behind was pushing already. And then suddenly I saw Magnussen completely stop in front of me. I tried to evitate it, but was just there and I was already flat out. So, yeah, just really dangerous maneuver.
It's quite some contact. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks.
How frustrating is it on a weekend of opportunities?
Yeah, really frustrated, especially because after lap 1, I had a good again, I was back up to P14, and after that, everything could happen. But yeah, just really dangerous things. So we need to check what we can change on this.
Hard luck. Thank you.
Really scary moment, really horrible. Just the speed of it, as you said, Nicholas Latifi shooting off to the left, and Antonio with nowhere to go but into the back of Kevin Magnussen. Let's hear from K-Mag at the end of the Tuscan Grand Prix.
Kevin, it looked like chaos. What happened?
Yeah. I haven't watched it from all the cars ahead. I think my feeling is that somebody maybe backed off to then try and go and gain like a momentum. I don't know for sure, but certainly the guys in front of me, the couple of cars ahead, they went and we were full throttle for at least a couple of seconds. And then they stopped again right before the line. And then, I had to stop, but the guy behind me had to stop, and eventually somebody couldn't react, and there was a massive crash. So it has to be looked at for sure and improved for the future, so we don't have that situation again.
A couple of drivers described it as dangerous. Is that fair?
Well, it's certainly dangerous, yeah, certainly, and something we want to avoid in the future.
The car, you've been saying all weekend, has felt better. You just not had much pace. I know you didn't have much experience in the race, but was it feeling all right?
I mean, we have those laps to the grid before the race, and I was really surprised with the feeling in the car. It was very, very good. And I came out of the pits behind one of the Williams, and I was just, catching him even on those laps to the grid. And I was telling the guys that it felt really good. So again, we got up to P12 from P20 on the first lap. We had a Williams in front. It was looking very good. So another missed opportunity, and feel very bad for me and the team.
Hard luck, Kevin. Thank you.
When Kevin describes something as dangerous, it's dangerous. He doesn't use that word lightly. Let's roll to the last one of the drivers involved in that incident. It looked, and I think he probably thought he'd got away with it by just skimming to the side of Kevin Magnussen. In the end, though, Nicholas Latifi caught up in the melee, caught up in the action. Let's hear from the Canadian at the end of his race.
Nicholas, what on earth was going on at the restart?
Yeah, I mean, with this track, with the finish line being so late, it was quite clear that I think the leader was always going to try and go as late as possible, just to avoid the slipstream effect. When you're in the midfield to the back of the pack, the Constantiner effect always kind of makes it a bit more difficult to judge. But from already the little straight going into the last corner, it seemed like at least the cars around me, everyone was pushing flat out, and like the restart I went, so obviously I went. Then I almost hit the back of Kevin already in the apex of the last corner. I had a really close miss there, and then bunched up again, and then again it seemed like everyone went again. So like, when you're that far back, you're just reacting to the cars around. In my experience, when that happens, and it's happened in Formula 2 and in Baku most noticeably the first year we had that, if the leader doesn't keep a consistent pace, I'm not sure if that was the case, obviously I can't see. And yeah, it just amplifies the effect with these cars that are so fast. So really couldn't do anything to avoid that. So yeah, just a shame.
How frustrating, because this could have been a weekend of opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, definitely looked that way. I mean, we avoided the chaos at the start. We were feeling quite good about the race pace, so it's just a shame. It's really unfortunate.
How'd that?
All of them, I think, incredibly lucky to have walked away from that. A really big incident, a dangerous incident. But we have to be thankful for the safety advances in the sport. We have to, especially today, be thankful for Halo, Pietro, because we saw both with Giovinazzi in that right front becoming loose, thankfully held on by the tether, but bouncing back towards the driver, and massively so today for Carlos Sainz, going into the back of your teammate, and the Haas really rocketing backwards towards him in the cockpit. I think that Halo today has saved us from it being far, far worse.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely important to have that protection over the driver's head. In crashes like this, you know, when it's that high speed and that much deceleration, you have parts of cars flying all over the place. As you said, Sainz with Kevin's car. It was Kevin's car that he went under, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Here you go, on replay right here.
You see the pieces almost hitting the camera of his onboard, and you can see that without the halo there's a much bigger chance of something flying in straight to the driver's head. So it's really great that we have this now in place, and it's a massive step forward into, you know, driver safety.
Yeah, and as the car is lifted up over the nose of the car as well, it rides on top of the halo and avoids his head entirely. Guys, I know back in the studio this is something you want to look back over, and there were a number of incidents during the race today in which we saw, well, the safety involved in that accident, but also a massive, massive crash for Lance Stroll, sideways into the tyre barrier, and huge, huge damage done to his car.
Yeah, well, Lance sat there for a little bit. I think the commentators were slightly worried that he was going to be okay, but of course he was. The car was in absolute pieces. We saw it almost sort of breaking up as the marshals moved it up over the wall. You have a bit of a theory on this, Sam. Was it the brakes, do you think? And is it similar to incidents we've seen already throughout the year?
So, in response to that, so we saw earlier in the race, we saw a Renault with a left rear brake problem. The brakes were on fire. Ocon retired from the race because he had a very similar brake problem to Sebastian Vettel in Monza. So those brakes were cooking up, they were catching fire. You got a lot of drivers on the radio saying, look, he needs to stop in this race because his brakes are on that. You can see it on your screen now. Ocon out there, you can see the smoke coming off almost exactly like Sebastian Vettel in Monza. And as the car comes past, you can see those brakes burning away. I mean, you need to just bring the sausages for the French barbecue there because those brakes are in trouble. Now, I've been looking into some of the technical data of that car. The brakes are manufactured by the same company that manufactured the Ferrari brakes that had the similar problem. And it made me wonder if the problem was related. Well, think back to Silverstone, Daniel Kvyat and the AlphaTauri. They also use the same company's brakes products. And when he had a tyre failure go through the Maggots-Beckett's complex, that was traced back to a brake problem, and the wheel rim basically got too hot. The heat went through to the tyre, and that caused the tyre to fail. It was actually a separate problem. It wasn't down to Pirelli. It was that the right rear was toasting itself. So then we get to Lance Stroll going through those really fast corners at the, Arrabbiata 1 and 2, and I think it was Arrabbiata 1 just on the exit of it. He comes out of the corner and you see he just gets out onto the curb, and you can see a little bit of rubber flying forwards when you see the tyre fail. There you go. That's the moment the tyre failed, and it looked like at first, was it just a tyre failure? It's the loaded tyre. Well, I'm not sure who makes the racing point brake brakes, but I know who makes the Mercedes parts, and I'm pretty sure it's the same. Same company again involved. So it could be completely unrelated, but when you see a number of failures like that on the rear ends of cars, one after the other, you start to wonder, is there a pattern forming here? And My word, what a lot of damage it did to that little pink, almost Mercedes.
Well, we've seen damage across the field. Super interesting points about the brakes, and I'm sure there'll be lots of information coming out from that particular brake supplier. I want you to put a figure on how much you think the damage cost out in Mugello today across the whole grid.
So this question came in on hashtag F1 Live during the race, and my only response was more than my house. Now, I think that's a conservative...
Where are you living, Sam?
Not a very big house. I think that was a conservative estimate, frankly, because I think the damage on the Racing Point alone would probably be worth quite a few houses, because I think that's millions of pounds or euros or dollars, whatever currency you like's worth of damages. But I think if you look up and down the field with the amount of damage through, you know, all those cars retiring, and you add in the lost prize money as a result of lost championship points and lost positions in the championship, it might be more money than you or I will earn in our entire lifetime.
Well, on that terrible note, we are going to head back to the paddock while I just go and get a tissue to wipe my tears.
Yeah, quite incredible scenes that, and quite a phenomenal amount of money. Let's not forget as well, it was the updated, upgraded Racing Point chassis that Lance Stroll had put into the barriers and turned into a alien-esque HR Giga type affair. Let's roll to the top three in the standings today. It was Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, and Alex Albon. Let's have a word quickly for the Mercedes drivers. It was Valtteri who got the great jump from P2 to lead, but didn't lead for that long because, of course, the safety car came out when we got the safety car restart, and the eventual actual standing start, Lewis Hamilton took full advantage. Without that, do we think it was Valtteri's day?
I was surprised he couldn't replicate the first start that he had, because he had such a great start. And then when he started again on you know, the second standing start and the third one, I said, oh, he might be able to replicate that, get another jump, but he just couldn't after that. So it's interesting to see what happened there. I don't know, obviously, like, grip is different, clutch bite's different, but he couldn't replicate it. And then I thought he might have had a chance for the win when he was able to catch before the safety car to pit, and then he got a pit stop ahead of Hamilton because Hamilton didn't get it because he was way too ahead. But unfortunately, I think the safety car went in front of him, which allowed Hamilton to then box.
Had the safety car picked up Hamilton instead of Bottas, potentially,
he would have had a pit stop.
Right, exactly. Just, you know, when it's not going your way, it's not going your way. And here's the thing with Valtteri, isn't it? He had led every single practice session. He was so in the groove with this track, and then Esteban went and binned it in quali, and Valtteri didn't get to put his lap in. And this is the kind of thing with Valtteri where his weekend just starts to unravel, because up to then, he was the one that was owning this weekend.
Yeah, he was on it. Up to then, he was on it, and then I saw he's going to be able to get it. Now he got the jump on the start. And here's a difficult place to pass, and I said might be his day, but unfortunately he couldn't hold it, and then he couldn't replicate his start again after the red flag. So
even got passed by Daniel Ricciardo at the final start. You know what? Let's hear from Valtteri Bottas at the end of a weekend that could have given him everything, and in the end gave him, I think, arguably less than he probably deserved.
Hey, Valtteri, a tough afternoon. It looked like you had great pace, but things just didn't seem to go your way today.
No, it didn't. It's one day it will. You know, it's it started like perfectly the first start, and also giving the position at the first safety car restart. That I felt that was nice, but then after that, not my day. But pace was good, apart from some tire issues with a medium tire, but otherwise okay.
You asked during the race to do the opposite to Lewis. In the end, they put you on the same tyre. What kind of happened there?
Yeah, I realised that with the medium, it just doesn't last. So the only option was go too hard and try to make it to the end. So yeah.
Any positives that you can take from this weekend?
Yeah, my pace has been good all weekend. That's a positive, and you know, it's just a matter of things going in my way sometimes. Then it will come.
Right. Thank you very much, Valtteri.
Okay.
Well, if they're not going Valtteri Bottas's way, whose way are they going? It's pretty much always going to be Lewis Hamilton. Another weekend where he picked up the pieces, made the most of it, and when he's in this kind of form, you just can't allow him to have that kind of luck. Lewis Hamilton with another race victory as he steps one step closer to that all-time record held by Michael Schumacher.
Hey, Lewis. Another crazy race this time, though. It worked out for you.
Oh yeah, it was a hell of a day. And I feel like I just feel exhausted because it's like, yeah, we did 3 races today, you know, and Valtteri was pushing the whole time. It's one of the most physical races there is, I think. So just mentally and emotionally destroyed.
That pass on Valtteri on cold tyres at the restart was mega.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I have no idea whereabouts he was and stuff, but I had to get my position back. You know, I worked so hard to catch him up and beat him in qualifying, which wasn't easy, and then to lose out on the start, which I put a lot of focus on, was frustrating as hell. But I was thinking there'll be more opportunities, but then I was starting when we had so many starts. Sorry, I can hear myself. Then we had so many restarts. Makes it really difficult.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So there's your top 2, and normally we would finish this part of the show with the race winner, but I think today possibly the better storyline here is the guy who finished in 3rd place, Alex Albon, a driver who's been under pressure all season, Pietro, who has had the risk of his seat being taken back from him by Pierre Gasly after his win last week in Monza, but he put it all on the line today. He brought home the podium when it mattered.
Very important. Like you said, he's under a lot of pressure since the beginning of the season. He's had the chances to finish on the podium, you know, for things that were out of his control. It didn't happen. And after Gasly winning last week, and you know the pressure's on, and he was able to deliver today, he had the shot to do it, and he delivered, passing Ricciardo with a couple laps to go. Very important for him. So really happy for him, really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw Christian Horner leaving the paddock while he was still in the pen, and he gave Alex a really big sort of meaty, well done, lad. Couldn't go in, you know, distancing and all that, but, you know, gave him a good big sort of celebration as he left. The paddock today will be very happy for Alex Albon. He's a great kid. He's a brilliant racer, and good to see him get that monkey off his back. He is a podium finisher, and deservedly so.
Alex, 3rd time around, trying to pass around the outside. This time it worked. How satisfying is it to get that podium?
Yeah, it was good. Obviously, it was all a little bit chaotic with the red flags, but we were struggling off the line. We couldn't get off. We had a lot of wheel spin every time we started, so we had to do all the overtakes on the circuit. It was good fun, but yeah, no, honestly, just happy to get the podium and yeah, I mean, for the team really for supporting me since day one. It's nice to finally get that podium.
Is it something of a relief in many ways?
I'd say so, yeah. I mean, it's always something which I've been wanting, and we were, for one way or another, we didn't quite get it. So to get it now, yeah, it's pretty special.
When you had that trouble with wheel spin at the final restart, did you think, oh my goodness, this isn't going to happen?
Yeah, the thing was we had the pace because on the medium tyres we were strong, and on the first stint we weren't as strong, but it's because we were fighting the whole time, and I didn't want the same thing happen again. I was like, oh god, you know, I got to we got 8 laps or 9 laps to overtake everyone, and I was pretty determined, to be honest. As soon as I had that bad start, I knew I had to be aggressive from turn 1 onwards, and we got past Sergio, which was nice, and Daniel wasn't going to get away from me.
Congratulations, Alex.
Thank you.
So Alex Albon then with his first Formula One podium, but it is Lewis Hamilton who once again roars to a race victory, and as if that wasn't bad enough for his rivals, he took the fastest lap point to boot. So it's 26 points for Lewis Hamilton. Let's get your championship standings at the end of the 2020 and inaugural Tuscan Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton, of course, maintains his lead at the top of the championship standings, 190 points. Woo. Valtteri Bottas, 135, plays Max Verstappen on 110. Lando Norris moving up to 4th on 65, and Alexander Albon taking 5th with 63. Lance Stroll slips to 6th on 57, with Daniel Ricciardo now 7th. And I wasn't quick enough to get all the rest of those guys there. So Carlos Sainz 11th, then Ocon, Vettel, Kvyat, Hülkenberg, Raikkonen, and all of those guys. And in the Constructors' Championship standings, it is, of course, Mercedes at the top on 325. And believe this or not, Lewis Hamilton on 190 points to himself has more points than Red Bull. He has more points than Racing Point. In fact, he's got about as many points, although my maths is terrible, as Renault and McLaren and Racing Point combined. Or McLaren and, McLaren and Renault combined. Astonishing, isn't it? That's absolutely astonishing. Lewis Hamilton is seemingly marching imperiously towards the 7th World Championship and the record for all-time race wins.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very hard to beat him now for the World Championship. Honestly, he's done it 6 times in the past. I think very difficult for Bottas to overcome that. I think Hamilton has it, and if he continues like this, which I'm pretty sure he will, he's going to be a 7-time world champion.
We're witnessing something quite incredible, aren't we? We saw Michael Schumacher's F2004 at the start of the day here, driven by Mick, who incidentally took the lead in the F2 Championship today, or this weekend, I should say. We didn't think those records would ever be beaten, and here we are witnessing history, witnessing Lewis Hamilton set new records in Formula One.
It's unbelievable. And about that Ferrari 2004 V10, that engine.
Woof.
I mean, that was nice.
That was something else.
To be honest.
And Mick was lit. Like, from the first lap out, he was lit. Great stuff. It's been a wonderful weekend here in Tuscany. How much have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Beautiful weather here, amazing track. I wish I was driving because I'm really jealous because this track is just unbelievable to drive. And really good food around here too.
Well, that's the thing. We've been in Italy for 2 weeks. I've put on approximately 2 stone, as I think everybody has. And yeah, looking forward to getting home, maybe not eating for a week. And yeah, I think it's desperately needed. Who's that down there? Is that Checo? It is Checo. Of course, the guy who at the moment doesn't have a seat for next year. Rumours, though, that Red Bull might be interested in him if Alex Albon hadn't picked up. So that podium today for Albon coming at absolutely the right time, wasn't it?
Yeah, perfect timing for that. And actually, I didn't hear that, but that's that's interesting to hear.
Well, there we go. I think that's just about it. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, we appreciate so much your support. We appreciate so much you watching. Pietro, I appreciate you coming on, mate. It's always, actually, every time you come on, it's a mad race. So I think that's it. So long as Pietro's on the post-race show, we'll get a crazy one. Heaven knows what will happen next time. Thanks as well, of course, to Rosanna and to Sam Collins back at the studio at home. And we will see you next time. Heavens, what race is it next? Russia. It's Russia, isn't it? 9 races in 11 weeks. We're all going for some sleep and a diet. We'll see you in Sochi.
Yeah, I'm stuck. He's looking cut with his... Honestly. Oh my God. You're okay. That's dangerous. I got a puncher. Get in there, Lewis. What an awesome race, mate. That was so hectic. Absolutely crazy.